Hey, we're here today with Tonya Henderson, uh, a painting poet. She's got an Etsy shop there and started up a new Patreon. I found Tonya at a holistic fair in Frankenmuth, Michigan, which was an absolute blast. Of course, I can talk the ears off of anything at this point. But yeah, Tonya's got a website. She also has a Facebook page, Creative Spirit Studios, and Creative Spirit Studios for Patreon, which is new. But we have been having some things that are outside of the spirit painting realm that I think is still spiritually impactful. The painting behind me is something that Tonya did for me early last month. And I still haven't watched the video, the video that you did or that I did, because it was like, oh crap, I forgot to do the go button. So, and I ended up splitting it up. I can't remember why I ended up. I was like, oh. And then I did take a real quick pan of the studio. I would highly recommend doing that. That was just a blast. That was just a beautiful setting, really nice studio. And that's me. Read me. See the book on the bottom? Yep, she read me like that book. So it was a whole lot of fun. And what's really cool about it is that every time that you would sit down with Tonya, you're going to get a different picture because Tonya's reading your spirit energy, and yeah, you're going to have a different picture. Your moods change. Your focus changes. Everything changes about you on a daily basis. Um, so yeah, so our conversation kind of morphed into this cymatics we were talking about because um, you'd seen the light. You'd seen the light, and we talked about that. So can you kind of maybe go over what you told me about your experience, because you travel a lot for your job?
Yes. So are you wanting the awakening experience? Is that what you're?
Which one?
Right, right, right.
Which
So let me just preface this with, I've been studying metaphysics since I was about 24 years old. I'd had a lot of experiences and conversations with friends around religion prior to that, and how some things just didn't seem to like add up or make sense. And so there was always this seeking. So then I ended up getting a job and working with this gentleman who he would bring me a different book every single week. And he said, when you get done reading this book, you bring it back, I'll give you another book. And this went on for a couple of years as I worked with him. And he introduced me back in those days to spiritual frontiers. And I know that spiritual frontiers still probably has some operating chapters, but it doesn't exist in this area anymore. It kind of, for whatever reason, dissolved here. But through that, then I met all this group of women, and we all met every single week, and everyone would share what they knew. And so I was gaining like a vocabulary and an understanding about things that I hadn't heard of before, like astrology and numerology and homeopathy, or I mean, there's just so all these different people had these different skills, and they all taught everyone else in the group, which was pretty fascinating, and I stuck with them for a number of years, and then I started having my own experiences, like experiences beyond just like the things that happened to me was as I was growing up. These were bigger, bolder things that were happening to me. So I was kind of in a crisis time. I think everybody hits those moments where, you know, something has to change. That your life, either there's it's meant to be more like, this can't be all there is to life. This just doesn't make any sense. Why are we here, and what are we doing, and why do things not seem to be working? And I try really hard, and I'm working really hard, and I try to be a nice person, and yet, life just isn't, I guess, what you had hoped it would be, or what you thought it was going to be. And then I kind of decided I was going to just quit doing everything. Like I wasn't necessarily giving up on life, but I was giving up on everything I was doing in life. And that opens the door, right? Because we're so blindsided by what we have been told. You should go to school, and you should get a degree, and you should get a good job, and then meet yourself a nice husband, get yourself a suit, my mom used to say. And
Yeah, we go through that whole indoctrination period, and you're right. I mean, I had the same type of sometimes people think epiphanies are this wonderful, marvelous, oh, and it's like, no, you're on your knees sobbing on the kitchen floor, and it's sopping wet, and you're going, what is going on? What is this? So epiphanies can be traumatic.
they can be traumatic, and they can also come in small doses, like small doses that lead you up to the traumatic, and then small doses afterwards, because I think the whole thing is sort of this roller coaster experience. So it was just a process, of kind of letting go the way I thought things were supposed to be. And truthfully, I just kind of like, I'm just going to do what feels good to me today. I'm not going to do what I think I have to do, or what I should do, or what somebody tells me I should be doing. I'm just going to do what I feel like doing. And so it started unfolding where I was actually in my yard. I think nature helps propel us sometimes too. So I'm out in my yard. I have a lot of flower gardens. I love working in the dirt and planting things and watching them grow. And I love mowing my yard, because as you're mowing, if you take the time, if you're not just speeding through it, you take the time, you start noticing things that are happening in your property. And that's what was happening. I was just kind of noticing these tiny little universes in the yard, in different places. Like, where the clover grows is one area, like a whole little universe happening in that area where the clover. And then over here is the thistle, and the thistle has a whole different vibe, and there's a whole different feeling to that part of the yard. And I was just noticing these things. And as I mowed near the willow tree, I heard the willow tree speak to me. And it was telling me that the mower was hitting the roots. The roots were coming up out of the ground in a couple of spots, and the mower was hitting the roots. And she was just asking me to move, like, don't mow this area. So I'm like, no problem, I can do that, So I just started mowing around that area. And what ended up happening is I started creating all these paths through the back of the property. Rather than trying to mow it all, I started creating paths through there that would avoid those types of areas, not just for that tree, but for other trees. And before I knew it, I'm up writing. I've always been a writer, and I'm up on my deck, and I'm writing this little poem that felt like it was just given to me from that willow tree. And then a few weeks later, I'm hearing another tree and another tree, and I'm getting this story is starting to unfold about the real true nature of this property. And that was the beginning. Those were the little nuggets, because it wasn't a big thing. It wasn't even a big surprise to me to be able to hear those things, right? So they were little nuggets. And the thing is that there was a feeling that was coming, right? This feeling of peace and joy and just happiness, because I was doing what I felt like doing rather than what I thought I should be doing. And with that came more and more of this feeling good, feeling really good. And then, you know, eventually there was that moment, just like you were describing, where you're like, I'm giving it all, because that was so good, you know, that was so good that it really helps you see how not good other things are in your life. And so you get to that point where you're like, I want my whole life to be like that. I don't want this. And it is sad, and it does bring you down, and it can make you feel like you're falling into depression, you know, because it's releasing, it's opening you up to let all that crap go. Like, let that go. It's not helpful to you to feel like you're struggling. And it brings this awareness to you that's what you've been doing. You've been struggling your whole life, struggling to whatever, make people like you, or to get good grades in school, or to be that good wife, or, you know, you're in this constant struggle to be the thing or person that you believed you were supposed to be, or what you were told you are, even, right? Because a lot of times people are saying, oh, well, she's this, you know, they put you in this little box, she's this, and then they tell those people, and you meet them, and they already have this box that they've got you in, and you're trying to, like, not go too far out of the box, because then, you know, what will they think, you know, or how will they respond, or what would happen if. And so at some point it was just a matter of letting go of all of that and falling into that feeling of I guess I just didn't care about anything anymore. I don't even care if I lived till tomorrow, because I didn't want to live like that anymore.
Right,
And
right. And
right, so
that's a whole part of deprogramming yourself, and accepting that living in that box and having all the stress and the strife is this is what life is, really, really, come
right,
on. And, you know, I think we can justify, you know, I'm helping people, you know, and that makes me feel good. Well, most people will feel good when they help other people, but not when it's gonna, you know, essentially psychologically, emotionally, and physically trash you. I mean, I think that's where a lot of us have found ourselves at this point. And so there's a lot of and it's not that you can't help people. You know what I mean? It's just done in a different way. It's done in a way where,
yes,
you know, you're not, you know, I remember hearing this one healer about a year or so ago. She was, and she was, you know, seemed like she was doing a really good job, although I never uh, took part in any of her services, but people were saying that she's been able to help them release a lot of the negative energies, been able to help them release that. But what she was essentially doing is she was taking that on herself. And it, like I said, it trashed her. And I've actually heard two of healers that were spiritual healers that were saying that. And you had mentioned about, we'll talk about like the words thing and that. And they have found that a lot of the spiritual healers will not really realize what they're doing. Oh, I clear the energy, I blah, 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 blah. Like, well, look, you got into that situation from that person. You also need help with releasing that, because I've done that in my own hypnosis healing process, where I was with someone and they were going through a process, and they said that her spirit guides were helping her, and her spirit guides asked me to participate because she couldn't do it alone. She needed my help and the help of who was with me to help her. And she said she felt this lifting, just everything. It was, she described it. I couldn't see it. All I saw was a lot of this type of color that most people would have, like pinks and purples and some lighter colors. And she saw black. she saw this bizarre black, she described it. But it was interesting because you have to ask people for help. You have to. Sorry. I mean, they say we're all connected. Yeah, kind of, sort of, but you still have to ask for it. You know, you can offer it and it's going to do maybe some enlightening, but it's not necessarily going to do the job. You have to go and ask people. You have to learn that aspect of self that has that humility. But the biggest thing for the healers is when they don't ask for that help, a lot of them are developing that C word. Statistically, it's quite high. And one of them was really, he's quite famous and he's quite popular. And I think he's resigned himself that he has this illness and he's going the traditional route for treatment. But he came up with that and said that that's a common illness for healers to go through. And it's like, damn, I don't want to be that person.
Right.
You know, yeah. I think we need to all understand, and it's not even removing that negative energy. I think a lot of times what needs to happen is you need to transmute it. You're going to still have that same ball of energy, but it's going to be lit rather than absorbing. It's going to light. So when you, and being the artist, you understand that what your eye sees is not what's being reflected. So if I'm looking at the dark color behind you, black is not being reflected to my eye. Nothing's being reflected to my eye. Is that accurate? Kind of, sort of? So what's being reflected to my eye is not what I see. Is that kind of?
Well, what I'm doing is I'm actually looking at, okay, let me just explain first that the energy field, the auric field, is a projection. Okay, so it's being affected in every second by the thoughts that you're thinking. And so that's one of the reasons why, like you said, it could be different from one day to another. It can be different from this hour to the next hour if your thoughts change. But, you know, we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, and the majority of them are exactly the same thoughts that we had yesterday. That's the programming, right? And we have to have that programming to some extent, or our reality would actually collapse. So if I'm thinking, oh, well, I'm going to go get up and look out my back window and take a look at the trees this afternoon, well, I'm going to see the same trees in the same place that I saw them yesterday, because I'm programmed it in my mind that that's where that tree is. And so most of our thoughts are doing that. It's the same thoughts every day. But when it comes to the things that matter to us, that we think that we're thinking, because most people don't even have an awareness of what they're thinking,
right?
These littler thoughts, like what I'm going to do today is going to change from today to tomorrow, unless, you know, you're super highly programmed, and where, like, I get up at the same time every day, I do the same routine every morning, I go to work at the same place every day, I do the same job that I did yesterday. That's then there's even more layers to that, right? But these thoughts are projected from us, and they are in our energy field. And so what I'm doing is I'm looking at the thoughts that are there. Okay, so I'm connecting in two ways. There's two different ways of connecting. You can connect from person to person, where I am looking at your field and looking at the information and gathering the information, and I can connect to my higher self or God self, right? And so when you can connect in both ways, then I can speak then, or have my higher self speak to your higher self, and I can understand then that information that's being held in your energy field. And so when I'm looking at someone, I'm not doing it with my eyes necessarily. I mean, I can look at someone and see that auric field, but I can see it. I'm not necessarily totally reading it, although sometimes I do. It's it's not like it's always the same, or because it's based on the person that's in front of you. Everyone is different in the way and we're all reading each other all of the time anyway. I mean, it's not like this special gift or anything. Everybody does it. It's just that I've been understanding this and doing this my whole life. And these women, they helped me understand what I was doing, and
Right.
they taught me how to do things maybe even a little differently. And they taught me how some of the, not all of them, you never know all of them, but how some of the pieces fit together. Like, you take this bit of information and that bit of information, you put it together, now you have, like a sentence, putting words together, and you have a sentence, right? So when I'm reading someone, then I'm actually closing my eyes. I want to see them with my inner eye, right? My spirit, my soul, connecting with that spirit and that soul. And I'm asking, what does this person need to hear today? What do they need to know most today? Because there's so much information in your energy field. It could
Right.
take, we could go into a huge painting and I could work on it for weeks.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the information that is needed in the moment. What is it this person, like, I believe we're all communicating with God all of the time, every day. We have this conversation that's constantly going on, and if you can recognize that conversation is going on, and decipher between what is a God thought and what is your own mind, or being projected at you, or something, like, if you can decipher that, then you can have this constant flow of conversation going on. And I'm asking, like, tell me what this person needs to know.
Right.
What are they not hearing from you, source? What do you need them to understand? Or, what is the block that they're currently experiencing, that if they knew this little piece that could help them move beyond it, something like that. This isn't just about having fun, which it is fun to work with somebody like that, and to paint that energy and to give them the story or the message that's behind it. But the bottom line is, it's how do I help this person?
Right.
How do I help them get from where they are into a new space tomorrow, so they have new thoughts that will lead them to that awakening for themselves? And again, I'm going to repeat this. I don't think you have one awakening and now all you know everything. It isn't like that. You
No.
have an awakening, and then you enjoy that for a little bit until things get hard again, and now you're going to have another one. you
Yeah.
know and
Yeah.
and it might not be as, like, you know like, a lot of people, I think, have this idea it's going to be this moment,
Oh
like,
yeah.
and everything just changes. And it can happen like that, I suppose. It could be, highly traumatic, but the idea is that we're just waking up just little bits, little bits, little bits, and then we have an aha moment, and then we wake up some more, because it's never over. This is a journey, right? And so we're going to have those little moments, little moments, little moments, and then we're going to have another aha, and maybe it won't be as, like, I don't know, mind blowing as the first one, but it will be mind opening.
Yep.
you know
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah,
so
and I can't even remember what context, but there was one thing that, even though I do a clinical type job, a 9 to 5 sort of thing, that there are multiple ways to do that job. So there's 8 of us on our team. And each one of us, I mean, it's very siloed in a way, and I don't really interact with other colleagues. My job is to interact with the people on my caseload and help them if they need help. So the whole thing is that you can feel very isolated. So it's very siloed, it's very isolating, but we're all doing the same type of documentation. The thing is that if you look at these different documents, they have the same fields. They ask the same questions. But within each one of those fields, everybody, and I can go back and even look at my own documentation over the last few years and say, wow, that was really different. I can look at last year's, and when I'm renewing everything, it's like, well, that's really different. I see a different person now. And that kind of opens up a dialogue. So a lot of people say, are we going to, I've had people ask me that. So when are we going to start our meeting? I said, we started the meeting when I walked in the door. It's a conversation. Really? Yes, it's a conversation. So you're giving me all kinds of information that I'm going to update your chart with. So people don't understand that there are different ways to do the same document that's a rote document that's asked the same questions every time. But I'm going to go in and I'm going to make that person feel like they're having a conversation, which they are. And when I kind of try to explain that to a couple of people, it's kind of like, well, you're in the sandbox. I said, so why do I want to play in a sandbox when I have the Sahara at my feet? I'm not going to play in the sandbox. And it's all sand, but you get such a bigger picture of who that person is when you're out playing in the Sahara, as opposed to trying to see that person's life from a sandbox. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. So it's even though I get up and go to that job, it's the same building, not always exactly the same time. I'm not wearing the same clothes. I don't have my hair the same way, but I feel like the only thing that I'm going to take in there that's the same is my positive attitude. That's it. That's the only thing that's going to be the same is the positive attitude. And that's done with words.
Showing up differently too. That person is showing up as the new person that we're all doing that every day. We're becoming someone new every single morning. We're a new person, and it's physical too. I mean, physically we can see that we are a new person, because I'm certainly not the little infant that came into this world, and I'm not the child. You can see by looking at me, I'm not the same person,
Right.
My hair is turning white. I'm not the same person I was.
Yeah. So. Exactly right. And so, yeah. So where did you want to go from there? Because I think a lot of the dialogue that we had before we started was really cool.
That was fun. But I think to help people understand maybe a little bit, it seems a little woo-woo when I say, oh, I do personal energy portraits. I read your energy and I paint the picture, and people get confused over, well, what is that? What do you mean by that? Because I think a lot of people don't even understand the auric field. That's your energy, and that reading energy is something that we all do every day. You can feel someone out, right? There's a reason why we say feeling someone out, or I'm picking up what you're putting down. I mean, that's a literal, thing that we're actually like picking up those thought blocks that somebody else is, we're projecting those thought blocks out, right? And somebody else can literally pick up that thought block and say, oh yeah, I know exactly what, I get you, because we're reading each other all the time. I think that's really important for people to understand, is that we're always doing it all of the time. I'm going to go talk to somebody and feel them out, see how they're feeling about this, where it's in our language. Go back to the words thing, right? It's in our language that we're already doing that. And I think that, when you're, I want to say, dabbling into this for the first time or whatever, it can be maybe a little bit overwhelming, what you think you don't know. But I want to encourage everyone that you know more than you think you know, because we're already doing the reading of each other to some degree with every interaction that we're having.
Right. And it's almost like too, though, when you start talking about that, you can start second guessing yourself. And it's like, oh, well, maybe it means this, because I know I do that quite a bit. I'm always questioning myself. Well, did I read that person right? Did I do this wrong? Or should I do this or should I do that? And you can, that whole analysis of paralysis, that's me, So it's having that confidence to understand that that's what you've been doing.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute, because it's more than confidence, it's understanding. Okay, so what I've come to understand is that the first thought is the God thought, and that every thought that comes after that isn't in alignment with that, because usually it's not, that God thought comes in and says, hey, here, let me give you an example. This is kind of from a Neil Donald Walsh story. He talks about how, when you see someone sitting on the street, a homeless person, and they have a tin can out, right? And you think, oh, I should give that person some money. So you reach in your pocket and you fumble around for whatever change or whatever, a couple of dollars you might have in there, and you start to pull it out and you want to give it to the man. But something inside of you then says, oh, wait a minute, you might need that for a cup of coffee or a bus ride, or you might need that money for parking or something. And so you kind of shove your hand back down, and now you're like 3 feet past the guy, and you kind of feel bad about yourself because I should have done it, but now you're feeling kind of embarrassed. You don't want to turn around. So you understand the thought process there. The first thought was you should reach in your pocket and give that man your money. And you had a moment there where you could experience yourself as God, right? Because that man sitting there is praying for someone to help him. And God put you in that place to help that person. And God said to you, give that person your money. Now, the second thought was, oh, what if I need it? I might need that for a cup of coffee, or I might, and then all the spinning thoughts that happen after that, every spinning thought and all the feelings that come after that is not God. It's the first thought. Every thought that's after that is the monkey mind.
Do you think that we can still learn from making those types of, and I don't want to put something morally judgmental on something like that. You can't really say that that's good or bad or
no,
whatever. No. It's just something that you took, you saw, you felt. It's like, oh, okay, well, that was, probably something I should or should not have done, or, whether you do it again, walk by that person, drive by that person. Because I work in a city that seeing something like that is common. I mean, you see people out there and they're not all disheveled and they're not all looking like they didn't have a shower. Some of them do look like they have clean clothes and they don't look malnourished. And they're out there with, like you described, like with a tin can sort of a thing or a sign. Some are looking for work, but it's just part of being in that. And like you said, feeling that pull, that draw with that initial thought. And how would you put it? Just doing it.
Okay, so let me explain here. Okay, so it's not about the person who's sitting there with the tin can. It's not about that person. It's about you, right?
Right.
So I could walk by that same person and think, oh my goodness, I should keep my distance from that one. Right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I'm telling you, I've driven off the highway and there's somebody standing there and I get the creepiest feeling like, oh my gosh, make sure your doors are locked and your windows are up.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thought. It's not about the person. It's about the thought we're thinking.
Right. But it's acting on them, because you could do the converse where you could get that creepy feeling and then say, oh, I'm being prejudiced. You could talk yourself out of that and put yourself in peril.
Yes, exactly.
You could guilt yourself into doing something stupid.
Yes, exactly. And we do it all the time. We do that all the time because we're not listening and we don't understand that first thought is that God thought. And so that's why I bring that up, because I want people to understand that even in like what I'm doing, I cannot second guess when I sit down with someone to do a portrait. I cannot second guess myself, because if I'm second guessing, I'm questioning God. And so to me, I have to go with what's happening in that moment and never second guess, never question. It's not about confidence. It's about trusting in God. It's about having faith in God. And it's funny because I'm not this big religious person. I am a reverend, but I'm a reverend of the Church of Divine Intervention, which is the lineage from.
And there is a difference between someone who is spiritual and someone who is religious. To me, religion is very corporate, segmented. It's there. We're back in that sandbox again.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So that's, I think, it's the difference between spirituality and religion. You're in the box with religion. You got the Sahara at your feet and the Gobi and any other desert you can think of, but at your feet, just generally at your feet.
Right, right.
Really good
and it's about
point.
That. It's about realizing that this conversation is going on all of the time. And I think I want to just mention too that I don't see God as this being up in the sky that we're going to answer to one day. I feel like we're answering to God in every moment. It's not going to come a day where God is going to judge us. We ourselves are judging ourselves every single day. And that's where these other thoughts are coming in. It's like I walked by knowing that I was being guided to give my money to this man, right? But I walk by and all these thoughts are like, oh, but what do I need? It's about me now, right?
Right.
And then it's like the guilt feeling like, oh, I should have done that. Like I'm not a good person because I walked on by. So we are judging ourselves in that moment. And there's nothing to be judged. I mean, it's the whole 10 Commandments even is one of these things where it's been religiously said, you shall not, and you will do this, or if you do not do these things, then you'll go to hell, right? But the truth is that when you become conscious, when you wake up, you'll realize you would never want to do these things because you're hurting yourself by doing those things.
Right.
And so it's about awakening. It's about realizing the truth inside the doctrine, that it's there, it's in the Bible, it's truth is there, but it's not being presented to people in the way that helps them to understand. It's this power over thing, right? That's permeates society. You have to be this way or you're going to go to hell, or you're going to go to jail, or you're going to be, ousted out of the group, or, thrown out of the church,
which could happen. I mean, you could go to jail, you could get thrown out of the group, but that might be the best thing that ever happened to you.
It might be.
It's like you said, it's not always about fun. Sometimes it is about the woes and the tears, etc. So really good example, because we're looking at, did you take action on that initial God thought? And if you didn't, you have all this follow-up guilt. All right. Yeah. So something happened to me last night where I was texting with a friend and it didn't feel like I was the one texting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then when that was, I think it was like 3 texts, and I stopped and I stood and I found myself, I was in my room and I'm looking at my phone in my hand and I'm thinking to myself, what the heck just happened? So I texted, hey, that wasn't me. I don't know what just, I stood there dumbfounded and I felt like a total moron because I felt like those weren't my words. It was like somebody else.
Okay, but were those good words? Were those
words? Absolutely.
Okay, so
I mean, I believe so, but it kind of like was, it was just kind of weird.
Well, so that's kind of
as an overarching idea, you follow that initial God thing, and you're like sucked in, and you're going, whoa, you're on that ride, and then you go bink, and you're going, holy crap.
Right. So a lot of artists, they talk about, and I think that this follows through with people of all, anybody who's creative or has a single passion like sports or something, all has this experience that they call being in the flow, right? So I know some people can do it when they're cooking, or I don't know, even if you're raking the yard and it's, constant, you can get in that movement, that flow of energy where things just seem to be unfolding. Now you feel like you're in the stream of creativity is what it is. And I think a lot of people can get there where they're feeling that. And there's like levels to it. So you might just like have that initial experience, or maybe you've never even thought you've had the experience, but as we talk about this, you'll go, oh, I know what she's talking about. I did that last night when I was mixing up a meatloaf or whatever. Right. It's just this moment where you're totally into what you're doing and you're completely out of your mind. Basically, you're not thinking all the, the monkey mind disappears, the rambling that goes on in your mind kind of subsides. It quiets down, and you're in this moment where everything is just about what you're doing, whatever that is. It could be reading a book. It can be simple like that. But for me as a painter, it comes most profoundly when I paint, where the world disappears and I'm in my own little universe, and I'm in the flow of creativity. Yeah. So if you can understand that, then what happened next, the next level, was this falling into the space where you feel like you're the instrument and you are being used by the powers that be, the universe, God, spirit itself. And what was being created was beyond me and my mind into universal mind moving through me. Mm-hmm. And some of those paintings became they were so amazing. I would have never been able to create that with this.
Right.
You become the instrument. So it was flowing through me. So I was the actual paintbrush, That's how it kind of feels. And so when I do these portraits, what will happen is, I'm receiving this information and I'm trying to paint it the best that I can, but I'm painting, and anybody who's ever drawn or paints or sculpts or anything like that can totally relate to this, is like, we use reference. I have reference material when I'm creating on my own. I have reference material. I don't know what a cauldron looks like specifically in this angle. I have to look at some kind of reference material to get an idea in my mind, and then I can try to sketch it from the reference material. Well, when I'm sitting there with someone, I can't do that. I cannot use reference material. Right. And I will get this image or a message that I have to paint a thing. And I'm like, I don't have any idea what that looks like. I don't know how to paint that. So I can't come from my mind. I have to come from that space where I'm the instrument. And I have quite literally at times taken that paintbrush and dipped it into the paint and not looked at the canvas and just let my hand do what it was going to do. And it always comes out better because I'm allowing that creative flow to move through me and do the work. It's so I can say, I do these personal energy portraits, but how much of it
you truly are in your right mind?
I'm totally out of my mind when I'm doing these
things.
You're
in your right mind.
Well, when it comes to right brain, left brain, that's what people think of there, but it's truly being out of your mind. Get out of your mind, get out of your way. Right. Let the creative nature of the universe move through you and create in front of you the life, whatever. It doesn't have to be painting or anything. I mean, we're talking about your life. You need to let your subside the mind, right? That's what meditation does. It quiets the mind. We want to find a place where we find the gap in between the thoughts, right? That's the thing, the goal of meditation is we're always thinking. We can't stop thinking. The mind was designed to think. And so we have to find the gap, the space in between, and allow that creative nature to flow through you and create your life, and follow that first thought, and your life will become so much more than you ever imagined. It's like there is more to life.
And it's funny that you're talking about, yeah, so like the thought. So if you started with a thought, and thoughts are things, I mean, even when you get into that left brain analysis, they are measurable. They're something that you can see with our technology now. You can see the result. I don't think you can see the thought itself, but you can see the result of the thought expressing itself in a biological way. And that leads into the whole vibration with the sound and light and the cymatics. And we briefly talked about this before we turned it on, a book by Noam Chomsky with, I can't remember her name, Andrea Morrow. And I mean, it's an interesting book in kind of a weird way because it's very dry reading. And it talks about the cymatic side of it. And then with a friend sending me that book about correlating the sound with color and the universe expressing itself in those same things, that kind of really all has, because that book just kind of came across. It was on some weird, couldn't even tell you how I came across that book. And it's like, ooh, that looks interesting. I bought it. I'm just a little bit of the way through it. And then the friend of mine sent me that book that has just bing, bing, bing. I had mentioned in a group that I was in that I felt like the stars and what we're looking at, we don't really understand them. I think they're correlated or something to do with the cymatics, the shapes, the sounds, and the light and vibration. And it's like they're singing. It's like it's a song. So when my friend sent me that book, and I saw that little bit by Johann Kepler about the vibrations and the rotations and the orbits of the planets are all part of our musical scales. And that just blew my mind. It tied everything together. It just tied everything together. And I'm still kind of, because I in my, right out of, when I was in high school, I was offered a fully paid scholarship to a major university for music. And I had only been studying for a couple of years. It was offered by principal clarinetist of the Detroit Symphony at the time. So I was pretty excited, but life being what it is, and I'm, yes, I obey the parents in that respect. They held the purse string, so I honored their request and going and getting that office job and getting the suit. So I kind of put all that to the side, but that's always been, and I don't think that's something that we can have removed from us, is the music, because it's part of the vibration. It's also the light, and it's just the sound, the light, and the vibration, the oscillation of everything. So getting back into the music and the sound and the stream of lights and those vibrations, that can kind of come into a hard side of it and what we can see, because you see things in color and light that other people don't necessarily have the ability to see.
Right. And so let me go back then to the thoughts again. So what we're thinking is being projected into our field. And in the Mayan lineage that I was talking about, divine intervention, they talk about light language, which is not what most people are hearing about today being light language. Okay, that's not, there's two different things, or maybe they're combined in some way, but it's not what you are commonly hearing about today is light language. So a thought is projected, and it's projected as a shape and a color. And so shapes, just like any other symbol that we have, that we use, a shape has a meaning. It's a symbolic meaning, and a color has symbolic meanings. And when you put this shape and this color together, then we have that bigger puzzle piece, right? Because you're taking a quality of the color and a quality of the shape and putting them together, and now it has this new meaning, right? And so when I'm doing one of these portraits, I'm seeing these shapes and colors moving, and they're moving fluidly, kind of like a river or stream, and that's the energy moving. And so I try to explain to people, if the energy looks like tiny little dots to me, that tells me one thing. But if I'm looking at it and it's got like a dot that has a streamer, that's telling me something else. Okay, because thoughts, their energy, right, their movement and color and shape and whatnot, and so as they move they look different, right? So if a speck is moving, it then creates what looks like a tail. And then as that, when we have multiple thoughts, if we have one thought, it's there and gone. But if we have multiple thoughts, like maybe you're working on a paper or something, and as you're writing this thing, you're having more and more of these thoughts movement, you get momentum going, right? So these particles come together and then they start creating these little other types of movement. So there'll be a long, almost ribbon like movement to that energy, or it'll start forming shapes. A sphere would be the first shape, and then we have the platonic solids, right? And then from there we have the other geometry. And so when I'm looking at someone's energy and I'm feeling that out, I'm seeing these rivers and movements and shapes and colors and whatnot. And I can't always decipher, like, I can't always understand the big picture of it, but I always get the message that is intended for that person through these shapes and colors. And I've always been this way. I've always seen things when I close my eyes. I have these visions. I have like little motion pictures going on, or I have clips, or photographs. I see the movement of the energy, and I always just thought that was like everybody did that, but they don't. And apparently there are people in the world who you could say, draw me an apple, and they can't remember, like they don't have the same mechanics in their mind or their brain to be able to actually draw it. They can't see an apple in their mind. They have to see the apple literally.
Yep.
And so I'm at the other extent of that, because I see so much when, in my mind, I can see so much. And I'm fortunate too that I can actually hear things, like I'll hear song lyrics, or I'll hear bits of a poem, or just plain clear message, tell them XYZ. And but when I do the painting, it all comes together. Like there may be a solid symbol, like in yours, the book. Like there's no way around looking at the book. The book's a book, but the way it's painted, it has that feeling of being energetic. It's not a book, it's energetic.
Right. It's very fluid. I got a pyramid in the way there, but and it evokes that whole idea of what's springing from the book and how you described all of that. So and it has like you said, there were dots, but I looked at those dots and some of them are heart shaped. I don't know if you remember that or not, but and it was just amazing. And you said that the different colors do mean different things. So when you are given these opportunities to put this on canvas, it's very helpful. And it's like you said, I didn't realize it's like this. Yeah, it makes sense. What do they need to hear?
Yeah.
What do they need to hear?
So much, I could tell you the whole story of your life. if we had enough time. But
Yeah.
that's not relevant to right here,
It's
right
not relevant and it's not necessarily helpful.
right,
So, for the highest good, what do they need to know?
right.
So yeah, that's really super duper important. But I mean, you do other things other than just the somebody contacting you and doing the paintings. There's other things that you do to kind of help people too, right? You
Yeah.
said you started
Oh,
a
yeah.
Patreon.
Yeah, the Patreon page is kind of a combination of things. So I've also been like last five, well, maybe a little bit longer than that. I started was teaching some marketing classes for artists at the museum. And I've just taken what I've been teaching all my life and I've been putting it together and coaching other artists to help them learn how to earn a living with their art, because that's one of the biggest hangups, right? Is that
I
we
think my
feel,
son needs to talk to you. I'll pay for him too. He's very, very good. He's amazing.
yeah, yeah, and
It's tough
you
to
get
get marketed.
talent and you don't know what to do with it. You don't know how to translate what you're doing into making a living with it. But again, that comes with having faith and trust in God and following the God thought, right? So I can't just come at anything that I do from this one perspective of, okay, you can draw and paint, so you have to do XYZ. This is
Right.
all about mindset and having confidence, building confidence through learning how to trust and have faith in yourself. And so I've combined those two elements into Patreon, and I've got 3 different levels there. So at the beginning level, it's just like, if you want to learn some things about mindset, about spirituality, and about being creative, that's the first level. It's just $5 a month. It's pretty basic, just um, it's a way for me to help people and for people to help me. So if it's like that $5 is just like what you'd put in your box at church, right? Um,
Right.
it's one of those. It's just that helps me maintain my ability to serve. And
Right.
so the second level then would be, you want to learn how to paint, you want to learn about design and layout and things like that. That's that level. And then the third level then would be the business coaching, like, here's how you make money with this. But all along the way, you're still going to get all the things from the first level and the second level. So if you still need help learning, layout, design, painting techniques, things like that, you'll still get that too. So I'm trying to help people at different levels and where they're at. And
And the teaching the painting thing is not something that's new to you, even though the website might be, because you taught art for a lot of years too.
a long time, a long time, long time. So when my children, who are 30 something, um, when my children were little, there was no school art program at all. So I started an after school art program. And that just led to other school districts. And then that led to teaching adults. And then that led to teaching at galleries. And then, bigger events. And then eventually led me to teaching at the museum. And so I've been teaching, some marketing at the museum. And I've been teaching acrylic painting at the
So
museum.
what museum are you at?
The Flint Institute.
Okay.
Art, yeah. And they
Yep.
have an art school. They're actually the
Yep.
6th largest art school museum in the country. And so I've been teaching there for a number of years, and I've just kind of like, I'm slowly weaning myself away from that and teaching in my own studio and online. That's where everything's going, right? Is online. I can reach more people. I can help more people.
Yeah.
And so that's the byproduct of having to becoming conscious and becoming and having awakening experiences, is that you get to the point where you're like, man, I just want everybody to know this. I
Right.
want everybody to understand you don't have to struggle in life, that like there is more to life. There is something
Yeah.
different than what you've been experiencing. And that's why I do the portraits, and that's why I do the Patreon, and the spirit guide paintings, all of that. It's just it's the way I know how to help people based on the talents and the gifts and the experiences that I've had. So that's what the Patreon is. Basically, I'm trying to bring everything that I've ever done together into one thing. And so I can't save the world. Nobody, I mean, I guess the world really doesn't need saving anyway, but I
No.
can at least help lift people up to that, whatever next level is for them through that method.
Right, right. That's awesome. So, any other last words or words of inspiration? I, there was just like so much that we were talking about before. It's like, dang, we need to
Yeah.
have part 2 to this.
Hey, we could have part 2. I mean, we could have conversations like this once a month and probably not ever really totally get there. But
Yeah,
I
I still think we should go to like one of those mound things and kind of like take a couple of little videos and we could turn that into something really good.
that would be
We have a
fun. Yeah.
lot here in Michigan that I think there's some sacred ground over near Mount Pleasant. I'm not far from Mount Pleasant, so that would be something there. And you're closer to like the Lansing area, so
Yeah.
yeah, there's stuff just all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as far as closing words, I think, if you could take anything away from what we've talked about today is really just realizing that first thought is your higher self or your God self or the universe or spirit or God or whatever you want to call it. That's your guidance, right? That's your spirit guides sending you in the direction that you need to go. The easiest path is to follow that guidance, and don't think about what you're losing, like that money in your pocket, right? Don't
Yeah,
think about what you might be losing in the moment. Think about what you're gaining in the long haul,
yeah,
because everything becomes easier when you live from that space.
right.
Everything. Your relationships become better. The money flows to you in ways that you would have never dreamed. You have more fun in your life, more joy, more happiness. You're spreading that too to other people. When you are happy, it's like anything else, a smile or a cold. You're passing it on,
Yeah,
and so start paying attention to your thoughts.
yeah,
If you don't know what you're thinking, you can't change anything. You have to
right.
be able to be aware of what you're thinking. That is awareness of your mind, and know that your entire life is being lived inside your own mind.
Yeah,
You think that it's out here, that life is outside of you, but your life is inside of you, in your own mind and in your own heart.
yeah. Going right back to that projection.
Yeah.
A projection of you. Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Tonya. Everybody go ahead and please do check out Tonya's website. I'll have all the links in the description below. Please do check out her website, Tonya-Henderson.com, or find her on Facebook, Creative Spirit Studios. And I think is your Patreon link in the Facebook pages or
Find it. It's probably in the last one or two posts, probably.
yeah, and your Etsy shop is different. It's the painting poet.
Right.
Yeah, so
Well, thanks for having me.
oh, thank you. I really appreciate you doing this. It's like oh, an old friend of mine that I just met.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you again, and everybody do check out Tonya's offerings on Facebook and on her website. And thank you so much for stopping by. Blessings.